LBC, leading Britain's conversation. The time is 2:04. 4 MPs have pulled out of a Commons event with an Islamist lobby group that's been accused of dismissing terrorism and promoting hostility towards Jews. But 2 Labour MPs remain involved in this event. I am going to name them: Stephen Kinnock and Wes Streeting. What are you two thinking? You should be ashamed of yourselves. This group, MEND, I'm going to get to some of the details about some of the leaders of this Islamist group and precisely what they believe in, but there's no way you should be involved in this organisation, because your colleagues have realised it. Anna Soubry, co-chairwoman of the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims and one of the 5 MPs who was initially advertised as speaking with MEND, has pulled out, saying they don't have the best of reputations. That's putting it mildly. It's a bit of an understatement to say MEND don't have the best of reputations. I'm going to explain a bit about that reputation in a second. But, you know, if 5 of your colleagues have pulled out, what are you two still doing involved with this event? 3 of the other MPs that were due to attend Wednesday's event, Crispin Blunt, Sir Ed Davey and Joanna Cherry, issued a statement saying it's become clear that there is controversy over MEND's record and their claims of links between the organisation and its extremist views. Controversy? Controversial? No, it's very clear. It's not controversy. It's not debatable. This organisation has as its leaders in leading positions like listed directors of the company, extremists. And I can say this without being worried about being sued, because somebody said it. The Daily Mail called the guy Azad Ali, who's one of their listed director, an extremist, an Islamic extremist to be precise. He sued the newspaper and lost, which is why it's not defamatory to say that this guy has Islamist extreme views. And that's just one of the other people on this organisation. Let me tell you why it's not controversial. Let me tell you a bit about what this group MEND believes in. Well, let's start with the man I've just named, Azad Ali, who's listed as a director of MEND. He was on his own local radio station at once upon a time, said that he opposes democracy, to quote him, if it means at the expense of not implementing the Sharia. And you think this is a kind of organisation you want to engage with to prevent Islamophobia? This is the kind of organisation that's going to create Islamophobia if you engage with them, because people are going to hate liberal Muslims like me if they think that's what Muslims believe in. And you're empowering these views by propping them up in the mother of all parliaments. Yes, as I said, this same guy sued the Daily Mail for suggesting that comments on his own blog that showed he was a hardline Islamic extremist who supports the killing of British and American soldiers in Iraq by fellow Muslims as justified. He sued the Daily Mail for that and lost. In other words, the guy did write on his blog in 2008 that he supports the killing of British troops abroad. And you're a legislator in this country, and you're hosting the organisation that lists Azad Ali as a director in the mother of all parliaments. Let me continue. He used to attend talks by the spiritual leader of Al-Qaeda in Europe, Abu Qatada, and you're hosting him in Parliament. Wes Streeting, MP for Labour, Stephen Kinnock, MP for Labour. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Let me continue again, reading the views of this guy. In September 2008, he wrote himself, Azad Ali did, saying, "So, since we're all working our socks off in different ways for the resurgence of the caliphate, I've one question I'd ask you. Who would you want to be caliph?" to paraphrase the rest of it. He goes on to say, "My vote for the title of Commander of the Believers would have to be the Hamas chief, Ismail Haniyeh." This guy wants the Hamas terrorist group's leader to be caliph of the Muslim caliphate, and you think it's okay to instrumentalise his organisation in your campaign against anti-Muslim bigotry, and you don't stop to think that's precisely what's causing anti-Muslim bigotry, that you're propping up people like this who are defending and justifying terrorism, so that people like me and people who agree with liberal secular views from a Muslim background, when we condemn terrorism, our voices aren't heard, but these extremists are heard as if they somehow represent us? You don't have to live with the consequences of empowering those voices. We do. My grandmother, who wears a headscarf, and women like her who are potentially spat at in the streets because of this hostility and the division, they have to bear the consequences of your empowering of these extremist voices from within our communities. As I said, you should be ashamed of yourselves. And it's not just Azad Ali. The CEO of this group called MEND, his name is Sufyan Ismail. Let me tell you what he said when they passed a specific piece of legislation, when it was the vote in Parliament on recognising Palestine as a state. He says, the other night in Parliament, for the first time in British history, the first time in 300 years of the Israeli lobby's presence in the United Kingdom, And then he went on to celebrate the vote on the unilateral declaration of independence for the state of Palestine. Excuse me? 300 years of the Israeli lobby's presence in the United Kingdom? Excuse me? Hold on a minute. This 2nd of November, the Balfour Declaration that created the concept of the State of Israel is only 100 years old. The State of Israel itself is only 700 years old. What 300-year presence of the Israeli lobby are you talking about, if not really what you mean when you say Israeli lobby? It's a euphemism for Jews, and you're opposed to what you're calling the Jewish influence on our politics? If that's not anti-Semitism, what is? And he's the CEO of this group called MEND. And you, Wes Streeting, you, Stephen Kinnock, Labour MPs, are hosting this group in the mother of all parliaments, disempowering while doing so liberal secular Muslim voices who also concern themselves with Islamophobia. If you're worried about Islamophobia, why don't you work with Tell Mama? Tell Mama is a community-based organisation that focuses entirely on anti-Muslim bigotry. Why do you have to go to extremists like this? There are groups out there that deal with anti-Muslim bigotry that don't espouse or support or in any way justify terrorism. And so that's who MEND are. And my belief is that Islamophobia, or more accurately, anti-Muslim bigotry as a concept, is being instrumentalized by extremist organizations within our communities so that they can actually use it to gain credibility and legitimacy and a platform in legitimate democratic institutions such as the Houses of Commons, so that they can legitimize themselves as the face of the community when they are nothing but Islamists who justify and excuse terrorism. Azad Ali described the attacks on Westminster in which 5 people lost their lives. He said, quote, "It was not terrorism." This is who you're hosting in Parliament. And your defence, Stephen Kinnock and Wes Streeting, Labour MPs, your defence that, we need to engage with everybody. I'm sorry. No, you don't. Would you voluntarily host an organisation for the BNP in Parliament? Let me see you try and do that, Labour MPs. Let me see you try and host the EDL in Parliament and say we've got to engage with everybody. Go on, bring Tommy Robertson into Parliament if you think you want to engage with everybody with this lame excuse that we constantly hear from you. It's not your job to engage with extremists and thereby legitimise them like these Islamist extremists you're engaging with. And you don't treat Tommy Robinson in the same way. You don't engage with the BNP in the same way because you'd rightly be petrified of the public response and backlash at talking to the BNP. Why are you talking to Islamists? These people hold views far worse than Tommy Robinson does. If you believe it's okay to kill British troops abroad, when did Tommy Robinson ever say that? But you'd never touch him with a barge pole. This inconsistent double standard is born of nothing but the bigotry of low expectations. Fascism is okay as long as it's coming from brown people, which does over voices like mine and other liberal, secular, feminist and other types of reforming Muslim voices who are desperately trying to be heard so that not all Muslims are tarnished with the extremist brush. And then you go along and invite these numpties into Parliament again. It's frankly disgusting. So I'll tell you who should be engaging with extremists. If organisations like Hope Not Hate, if anti-fascist organisations out there in the communities who are doing work to engage with extremists to de-radicalise them, hosted these extremists with a view to try and get them to change their minds, that's different because that's their job. It's like saying, why is a prison officer talking to a criminal? It's the prison officer's job to try and rehabilitate this criminal. Likewise, Hope Not Hate's job is to try and rehabilitate fascists and Nazis. Quilliam, my organisation, it's our job to try and de-radicalise jihadis. So that's what we do. It's not the job of a parliamentarian to host the British National Party, members of the BNP, far-right fascists, or indeed Islamist extremists in parliamentary events and legitimise them. Unless, by the way, the purpose of the event is to say you're a bunch of extremists, how do we change you? But that's not this event. This event is under the guise of criticising anti-Muslim bigotry, while the same organisation you're hosting is espousing anti-Semitic nonsense by its CEO, claiming the Israeli lobby has influenced Britain for 300 years when Israel's only 70 years old. You are empowering extremists. It is not your job to be engaging with these people. It is your job to be distancing these people from everyday conversation so they become the taboo that they deserve to be. Currently, here in the United Kingdom, the far right are seen as a taboo. It is taboo to be a neo-Nazi. But how can we make this kind of extremism that is involved in some of the leaders of MEND a taboo if you're hosting them in Parliament? We're trying to shun these people in our communities and you keep propping them up. And then we, people that look like me, have to bear the brunt of the backlash when anti-Muslim bigotry has gone up manifold in this country because people are calling all of us terrorists. You know, the amount of texts I get on my radio shows of people saying, what are you doing on the radio? You're a terrorist. And they're getting that impression that all Muslims are terrorists because in Parliament, the people claiming to speak on behalf have these sorts of views. This guy, the director of MEND, for God's sake, he wants the leader of Hamas to be the caliph of his ideal caliphate. And then you wonder why people have a bad impression of Muslims in this country, because you're hosting him in Parliament. You're doing us over, Wes Streeting. You are doing us over. As are you, Stephen Kinnock. You know, and you're meant to be the Progressive Party. You are meant to be Labour, the Progressive Party, seeking out progressive voices to empower. And this is what's happening. And I'm wondering, when this kind of betrayal of secular liberal Muslims began and how long it's going to continue for, because I, for one, am sick and tired of it. Tell me what you think. 0345 60 60973. You're listening to Maajid Nawaz here on LBC and the time is 2:15.